You're listening to Zen and the Art of Endurance, your podcast for getting great at going long.
Bye. All right, all you studs and studettes. Welcome to another great episode of Zen and the Art of Endurance, the podcast where we go long and learn a lot about ourselves along the way. I'm leaving the pool. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But the big topic is the biggest endurance event in North America at the moment is Unbound gravel, specifically the 200-mile race. It has become quite the spectacle. And this weekend's race was incredible, both the men's and the women's race. We're going to cover, usually I cover the women's stuff first. We're going to cover the men's stuff first, just because I happen to have a quote in front of me from Lachlan Morton. Hold on, I'm throwing stuff in the back of my truck. By the way, I use Form swim goggles with the heart rate so I can see how hard I'm swimming and keep it easy so I can do polarized. And it turns out it's really good for me. But we'll get to that in a minute. The reason I mention it, I just remembered I need to charge my goggles, which just sounds so ridiculous. So we're going to cover the race, and I'm going to mix in, like I just did, a little bit of training kind of stuff here and there. Ooh, I got some gummy worms. And let's hop in the ZenDurance mobile studios and get rolling here. It's been hot, getting hotter. So I just hop in and turn on the AC and start to go. All right, let's do this. So people are really excited. This car's crossing behind me. Everybody coming for open swim instead of lap swim as we leave. Lachlan Morton won, and he is considered the spirit of gravel. And people have been wondering for a while, have we lost the spirit of gravel because it's gotten so competitive that somebody with a cool, relaxed attitude, and this is more of an adventure race and you find yourself out there kind of stuff is lost, And Lachlan Morton, he's a former World Tour pro. He's still on their list for Education First. I think he's still salaried. He's still nearly that caliber, but he hated racing World Tour because he's a real chill, laid-back guy. And he convinced, by doing some videos, because his brother's a filmmaker, by making some videos of him doing some weird and wild stuff, they convinced to keep him on the salary while he went and did alternative racing. And, things like really long backpacking trips and stuff. And of course, being a World Tour pro, he was excellent at it. But also, he's got the Kavorka. He's got this laid back, chill attitude, which is very, very magnetic. Just by it being so cool and chill and not trying and not trying to not try. And he hasn't actually won anything big in a little while, but he did, he set the record on the Colorado Trail, but also the Continental Divide from Canada to Mexico, but these things tend to make you kind of slower. If you go really long, you get really good at going just a little bit slower, but forever, like a diesel. And the race unfolded just so crazy. Downside is they're covered on Instagram, which is the most annoying way to try to follow a race. And the men's race on one Instagram channel and the women's on the other, on another one. So please make it regular video like YouTube or Facebook video or something. My God. Anyway, the race, it's got Keegan, the world's best, in it. And then it's also got Mahoric is his last name. I forgot how to say his first name. It's kind of like Matthew something. Mahoric, who won UCI Worlds, and he's a World Tour pro, but that was in Europe, the UCI Worlds one, and not as long and not as technical and difficult as Unbound 200 can be. And Keegan got fifth at that, but he didn't have a lot of UCI points, so he had to start at the back, and he crashed, and he still got fifth. So it's like, what's going to happen? And the race unfolded with Chase Wark, who's a friend of the show, off the front, aerodynamic as F, and AAF, and just a really competitive front group. And then I think with like, I don't know what miles to go, but kind of medium on, Lachlan kind of took off the front. Some other people would kind of randomly take off the front and they get pulled back in. Lachlan took a wrong turn as he was off the front, and they got caught by the pack again. And then towards the end, he had been off the front with Chad Haga, who is from College Station, Texas A&M University, which I can see out my window right now, is the college he went to, and his jersey is hanging in the local bike shop. And he rides World Tour Pro, but I think he's close to retiring from that. But he's a big deal. And he's never raced Unbound before. And so you've got Lachlan and Chad off the front. So the Spirit of Gravel, and then an Aggie. So we're like flipping out at our house watching this. Off the front, and with, many miles to go, 50 miles to go, just, and then they have like 2-3 minutes between them and the pack. And the pack was just demoralized and devastated. They had some crashes. Keegan crashed, and Mahoric broke a rim and was pretty much out. He just kind of rode it in, and then double flats and a broken rim, and said that he's going to stick to road racing. Mahoric is a really big deal in World Tour, and the race ended up with, let's say, with a quarter mile to go, maybe. I don't know the exact distance. Chad Haga gave it the beans and tried to drop Lachlan, and Lachlan barely hung on. And then because he did that, Chad kind of wore himself out a little bit, and then Lachlan sat on his rear wheel and drafted off of him, which is, this is okay at the very end. Now in the middle of the race, you don't want to be doing that because that's uncool. But at the end, now it's on the tactics about who's going to win and who's the smartest tactician. And they rode like that and they could do it. Lachlan could ride as slow as he wanted because the peloton behind them was not even in sight. So they've got all the time in the world to sit there and ride slow. So Chad Haga could not force Lachlan to go around him and for Chad to draft off of Lachlan. Lachlan sat behind him, and Lachlan's done the race a few times, and he knew like the terrain a little bit of coming back into town, and knew like where the last hill was and where the last turn was, like pretty familiar with it. And he said he's lost it before in that, and so by now he knew the tactics. And then with just a little bit to go, Lachlan dropped the hammer, and he'd been resting behind Chad, and Chad could not keep up, and Lachlan sailed across the finish line with arms over his head, riding no hands, just celebrating, being sprayed with champagne, and just freaking out with like he'd actually done it. It's probably the hardest bike race in the world to win now because you have almost no support, and you have to take care of your own flats, and there's lots of that, and your own equipment, and the road is rough. And it's 9 hours. I think he set a record too, 9 to 10 hours easily for the fastest pros. And let's read this quote from Lachlan. Let's see, I have it right here. I changed my approach in the month leading up to this. and focused on enjoying the riding I was doing. No getting caught up in what everyone else was doing, and drawing a firm line before the fun stopped. My hope was that regardless of the result, I could be content knowing I'd done it the way I wanted, without compromising my simple enjoyment of heading out on the bike for a different mission every day. That's really interesting. So for a month, he just kind of did something different every day. I think the training is he knew the hours to do and the effort to do, but he just kind of did something different, like maybe a different route or something. I assumed that approach would impede in some way my ability to compete at the highest level required to win. It's so validating to know that that wasn't true. I raced with what I had, found a like-minded rider in Chad Haga at the Hagaski, and we took the race on. It required me to pull on all the experience I've ever gained from road, ultra, and mountain bike. Thanks for all the messages and support, of course. This means a lot. Okay, we'll come back with my analysis of that and how you can apply that to yourself, and also what this means for the sport. It's a very big deal. Be right back. All right, we are back. We're going to go grab some lunch. Speaking of lunch and food, it is hard to beat Mexican food, fresh Mexican food, as far as healthy food goes. If you stay away, Tex-Mex is really greasy and cheesy. So if you stay away from that, there's nothing wrong with cheese. It's just they do a ton of it, and chips. But everything else is actually really good for you. Maybe the refried beans have some lard in it. But, oh, hello. Aside from that, it's actually beans and rice and salsa, picante, is onions, and just tons of veggies and cilantro and greens. They could stand a little bit more leafy greens, but man, Mexican food is good stuff. Okay. Just saw on social media Dave Scott, who's one of the original Ironman badasses, is having open heart surgery because he's got an aneurysm, which is like a bulge in his artery and stuff. And he's 70. He lifted up his shirt to show where the scar is going to be. Dude, the guy is still just trim. I want to look like that when I'm 70. And we're going to talk about creatine some this episode too. And he said something, it's vague because I think he's got a business that's kind of based on this, so he doesn't want to give away the game. But too much hard training, will do this to you. A lifetime of hard training. And, on this show, we've had Phil Maffetone, who taught Mark Allen, who's the guy who eventually beat Dave Scott, to do zone 2 easy training and just lots of it. And that'll eventually get you to beat Dave Scott. And it worked. But I'm curious, as you get older, stop doing the hard intervals and just do easy, but then lots of volume, but just easy, zone 2. And then, dude, so he's like, oh man, what I did to my heart. And it's like, whoa, but you're 70 and you're fit as F, dude. If you didn't do anything, you'd been dead 20 years ago. Like my great grandfather died age 50 something, 60 something, because he was a smoker and a drinker, like everybody else. He wasn't an alcoholic or anything, just that's what gets you. Anyway, back to the race, Unbound. Oh, I had a boil, an ingrown hair that turned into a nasty boil. We're going to get to talk about that. That'll be so much fun. Okay. And also, I've done some research on the women's winner, which is just as inspiring as Lachlan Morton, for those of you out there. But let's see, the men's race is... Lachlan is the spirit of gravel, and it's so great to see him win. And the comments on his posts are just endless of like, thank God that you won. And Keegan has already posted a picture of his new training plan to be more like Lachlan, and a beer. Lachlan drank beer and butt with recovery boots I think the night before the race. And if you drink like light beer and stuff, it's full of carbs and not too much alcohol, and it's hydrating as long as it's not too much alcohol is the problem. But if beer ain't the worst thing for you, as long as it's not too many, like one light beer on occasion ain't that bad. And then I don't even know where to begin, because Lachlan everybody's just like, Lachlan's so freaking awesome, man. And he's almost won it a few times, and you start to worry, as he just kind of fade away and not and just still be awesome. But for him to win this is so huge, and it's kind of like winning a stage or even the Tour de France for off-road. It is like, it's unbelievable. It's so cool. Okay, so let's move on from Lachlan, because we're super fan of him. Let's talk about another really interesting person, Dylan Johnson, who got 10th overall, but third out of, there's a subset of racers that are in the series, and they're up for a huge amount of prize money if they win. There's like 6 races, and so based on how they do it overall in the 6 races, and out of those people, he got third, which is insane, because Dylan Johnson is just an above average athlete, right? He's like, you take like your local guy that's pretty good, okay? And through the scientific approach, he made up for lack of just natural gifted talent, and has trained himself. You gotta always remember that. It's not just the gear. He trained himself using scientific training to get in great shape for this race. And then using engineering principles and scientific principles, worked and tweaked and marginal gained himself into a bike setup that, instead of like what so many people do, and they just blow things off and they go, oh, it doesn't really matter or whatever. Dude, it really matters. And in a triathlon, long distance triathlon, those of us that try to qualify for Kona, we learn this. It matters. Aero matter. Everything freaking matters. The competition is so difficult that you don't want to give away a single watt. You don't want to give away a single drop of sweat. You don't want to give away a single second slow on the run, or a single extra heartbeat on the swim, right? So it all matters in a really long race, and Unbound is physically really tough on the body, upper body too, and the winning time was 9 hours, 10 hours. It's so like, it's very much like an Ironman. And Dylan kept posting videos and making noise saying that aerodynamics matter. And the other thing that matters as much is rolling resistance on the bike. And rolling resistance as far as the tires go. And if you go with wider tires, they're thinner. And then because they're thinner, and this is like gravel bike versus mountain bike tires. Mountain bike tires are wider, but then they're thinner, and they actually roll faster with less resistance when you ride off-road on gravel and just a little bit of pavement. And it seems unbelievable, because when you ride a mountain bike off-road, you're like, dude, this is so slow, these big tires. But it turns out, with resistance testing and all this stuff, and then you got things like drivetrain, what chain lube and stuff. And another big one that I'm a huge believer is your wheels. Your wheels, as far as the aerodynamic shape and like your bladed spokes versus round spokes, and how deep dish they are, as deep as you can stand it, because the further the spokes go out to the edge of the wheel, that's more, the radius of that circle is longer, and then that's more distance for the end of that spoke to travel through open air, and that causes drag, where if you have like a deep dish wheel, it's already cut through the air once and never again. So, it doesn't have spokes following each other. It just has a blade following itself with no gap. And so Dylan's running mountain bike tires on deep dish road wheels. and then purposefully changed sponsors so that he could get a bike with even more clearance so that he could run 50 millimeter tires. And let's see what else. And then in testing, found out that the Lauf fork is actually more aerodynamic than the Felt's. He rides a Felt breed, and then a Felt's stock fork. And it's because the Lauf fork has suspension built into it. It's got like leaf springs behind it, trailing behind the leading edge of the fork, and then the fork's canted outward forward a little bit. And you start to think about it, the suspension in that fork is behind the front of the fork, so it makes like a whole trailing, it fills in the gap behind the fork legs. And in a weird way, you can see, oh, I guess so. You know, if a Camelback is actually faster because it fills in the gap behind somebody's helmet, then the suspension could be faster. And then the suspension is definitely faster when you're going downhill. It gives you more control. And then it does things like super narrow bars and tilted in hand and real aero position. They're not allowed to use aero bars. So as far as you can go to cheat the system and get around it. And then the latest thing, and so it reminds me of Lionel Sanders, right? Except he actually sticks with something. So Lionel Sanders is the everyman. Lionel Sanders is the age grouper that just tries and tries and tries and tries and tries to win and puts it all out there, right? But Lionel Sanders doesn't do quite the scientific research. He relies on other people to tell him what to do, and he just tries a whole bunch of stuff. Dylan Johnson is like Lionel Sanders in that he came from the age group ranks, had some talent and then just tries really hard. He tries really hard at implementing the scientific principles to reduce drag and reduce resistance, rolling resistance, and to optimize the F out of everything. Because I agree with him. I don't know if he's ever said this, but this is what I think. Gravel is just the lowest hanging fruit on how to win races, because with just optimizing your bike setup, because it is just saturated with people that don't think it matters. They're coming from a road, and roadies don't really care because they ride in packs, so the aerodynamics don't really matter for them, and they're really stuck with tradition. If anything looks weird and right? So it's the triathletes that come into gravel that are like, oh man, we should do this and we should do this and we should do this, and then they get weird looks, But so Lachlan rode a road legal aero helmet, right? He's one of the only people to have done this, and won, and that helmet supposedly feels like 5 to 10 watts faster, and while still being enough cooling effect, which is pretty cool. Check it out. It's a POC helmet, and in the pictures it's Pepto-Bismol pink. All right, I'm at the Mexican joint, so I'm going to grab some food, and then I'll come back and get back on the mic. And Dylan Johnson got the big joke is Dylan Johnson always gets 17th. And it's because he keeps improving. His watts keep getting better and his drag keeps getting better. But no matter what he does, he gets 17th in all these races because, and he's been racing the same races for a few years, and he'll be faster every year and more watts every year. But then he still gets 17th because the whole gravel game is increasing in speed and competitiveness, and more people coming from around the world that are better. And so in a way, him getting 17th is good, and it just barely qualifies him to be in the contention overall of this lifetime thing. You have to be 16th, 17th to re-qualify next year. So he's just barely good enough to be in the mix, right? He's definitely not a contender for the win. And for him to get third out of the lifetime group, and then 10th, not very far behind Lachlan, at the most difficult, most competitive, longest, hardest race is a real testament to marginal gains. And people think like marginal gains don't matter. I've ridden my tri bike around with people on their road bike, right? And a tri bike, just because of its different geometry, its different setup, its different everything, at the same wattage, I just ride away from people on it. So the bike does matter so much, the reduction of drag through the air. And then with his meticulous like testing of tires and rolling resistance on those, and what inserts or not, and what kind of, just like everything, the guy freaking pulled it off. And people are freaking out about how he did this, because it's like you or me, like it's a testament to if one of us, right, did all the right stuff, how much better we could do at these races if we quit worrying about what other people think and actually pay attention to the science and implement some of the changes. And what's cool, he's got a YouTube channel. He's awesome to follow. And everybody's dying for him to post like how the race went down. And also this is another thing. He figured out in the wind tunnel that putting the little camera, he has an Insta360, the miniature one, that actually made his bike faster. To put that under the front of the handlebars, because it cuts the wind first before the wind hits the head tube. And then the head tube has an easier time of cutting through. So it's like, you should run this little camera on his bike in testing. He should actually run that camera whether it's on or not. He should put that camera on his bike, because he will actually be faster doing that. Oh, and then the last thing that stood out from what he did is these jerseys. They just came out with these jerseys where you there is no, so like the USWE and Camelback packs have straps, right? So the jersey is body fitting, and then there's a pocket in the back with the hole at the top of the neck, a wide hole, and you drop the water bladder in that, and then your jersey holds the water bladder in place instead of you having the straps and everything. And then you are more aero because you're slicing through the wind, because you don't have these straps that are possibly slowing you down with just a little bit of drag from those. And then people are like, well, what if you want to swap these things out in the ride? Well, you reach behind your back, behind your neck, and then grab the top of the bag and pull it out. Now, how you put a new bag in while you're moving, man, I don't know. But that's going to be something that he's going to talk about. We're going to see some videos of this. But a few riders had it, at least two. I saw two, so I'm thinking 3 or 4 probably had this kind of thing. And so that's another thing. I think after that, let's talk about the women's race winner after I grab some food. All right, I'll be right back. All right, we are back. Oh, I'm about to get run over. Somebody without a rear parking sensor. Okay, Jesus Christ. God dang. Anyway, oh, honk at yourself, dude. I'm busy. We got podcasts to record. Because I just watched Lachlan Morton do a short little interview at the end of the race. He's holding up his bike computer, showing that he averaged like 21, 22 miles per hour for this thing. And the interviewer goes, no power? Because there's no power numbers on it. And he goes, what would I have done with that? Because it's so like you just race, and like you just got to go as hard as you can that you can stand, and you just better know yourself. And some pros do that. They race by power. Power is very much a cap for age groupers to not go too hard at the beginning. But experienced pros know what they're doing, and they can go a little bit harder. And sometimes they'll find that power actually holds them back, because they've got to go with the surges when people break away. And even Ironman triathlons like that sometimes. You think it's not, because they're not supposed to be drafting, but They say there is a little bit of a draft benefit on the bike. If somebody goes, you want to go with them. Anyway, then Keegan is at the finish line. Not Keegan, Dylan Johnson is at the finish line in this little tent recovering with a group of the other top 10-ish kind of guys. I just had this feeling. It's like, dude, you are now one of them, you know? And he said so. He's like, I cannot believe I'm sitting here with these guys. These guys, the best. He finished in the top 10, and you've deserved it, dude. You're a member of the gang. And, Lachlan turned and made a comment back to him and stuff, and it's like he's part of the group. He's earned his spot. They respect him. He did it. And I had that same feeling when I finished my first Ultraman, my only Ultraman, and I was like, I'm an Ultraman now. Now I'm part of the group. I can say that I'm an Ultraman. And I remember Emily's like, how do you feel? Or I said something. She gave me a beer when I sat down. And I said, I'm in their stupid club and they can't kick me out. It was so funny that I was not planning to say that. I did not mean to say that. Those are the words that just came out of my mouth. I'm in your stupid club and they can't kick me out. I did it. I did an Ultraman. So I know kind of how that feels. And congratulations, Dylan. You are a member of the elite, dude. You did it. Anyway, an interview with Mahoric at an aid station after he was dropping out because his wheel was cracked. They asked him, do you ride with tire inserts? And he said, no, we don't do inserts like that. And it's like, okay. And well, that's what'll crack your wheel. You lose tire pressure to a slow flat, and then eventually you hit a rock, and it can, if you're riding carbon wheels especially, it'll crack your wheel. That's one reason I make an excuse that I still ride aluminum wheels. Right now they're just cheaper. Anyway, I had a tire insert on the rear wheel of my hardtail mountain bike, and it does make a difference. It's nice. If you lose air, you can ride on it for a while. So let's switch over to the women's race. Another story of just the spirit of gravel and the spirit of almost anybody can win this thing if you can put your mind to it. The women's first place was Rosa Closer, I think, or Clovar, or Closer, Kloser, and I think she's from Germany, and she only started cycling 3 years ago. Only started cycling 3 years ago, and is also a full-time PhD student. And I commented on the post about it. There's a trend I've noticed that the best women cyclists and triathletes often are PhD candidates or have a PhD. And if you're really great at cycling and you're a guy, this is like a sexual discrimination kind of situation that we've got going on that kind of sucks. If you're really good at cycling and you're a guy, you can actually get paid enough early on and just have a career as that and then go do something else when you retire. If you're really good at cycling and you're a girl, they don't get paid enough to do it full time, and they can't live off of it. So they usually have full-time jobs on the side. They'll be a lawyer or whatever, attorney, a firefighter. A lot of people are like that. The women are, but an unusual number of the super successful ones are PhDs. They're like super, super smart. And I think with women's racing, like there was a women's, the Olympic or the Road Nationals World's Champion, maybe it was time trial or something like that, a couple years ago, came out of nowhere and won the whole thing. And it was a real surprise. And I think she was a PhD student in mathematics and statistics and engineering or something like that. And she figured out exactly what it was going to take to win the race, and then trained that way, and then executed that on race day. And so anyway, endurance sports take a lot of thinking, right? It's a lot of strategy and a lot of restraint and doing the right thing at the right time and optimization, and like Dylan Johnson, like marginal gains and so on and so forth, and knowing science. And The other thing, I wonder if this plays a part in the women's racing, is women's racing is a little bit different than guys, in that typically women are smarter. Women are going to be nodding their head right now. And because they don't have as much testosterone as guys, they don't overreact and act irrationally and aren't as gullible and don't surge off the front. And so because of that, they don't surge off the front or react to somebody jumping off the front, and they calculate and they play out their hand more strategically and evenly or whatever throughout the race, and they think more before they act. They pause and think before they act. And I remember reading this or watching a presentation on it, and it was really fascinating because they said that in some sports, women's racing isn't exciting enough because women don't react, and they'll just be like, that person's going too fast too soon. And with women's racing especially, they have to put in those little tricks to get them to do crazy things that the crowd loves. Like a sprint at the top of the hill gets an extra cash bonus. There's this whole thing about game theory that's really interesting, is if you make it, let's say first place is $10,000 and then second place is $9,000, you won't get a dramatic, like, all-out do-or-die race for first place, which is what the crowd wants to see. Because if you get second, you still get $9,000, right? And if you get third and you get $8,000, it's still really close to $10,000. So why try to kill yourself and try to beat the other person so bad? So the proper way to set up, unfortunately, to set up a race prize situation is you make the first place way higher than the second place, and then the second place way higher than the third, and then the third way higher than the fourth. So it is, if you don't go for it, there's a big loss on your part, and it sucks. So then you get people going, man, I gotta go all out, to win this thing. And then you get better racing, and then you get better crowd attendance, and then just people just like it better. Okay, so all that aside, and then also you got to do. They do this in crit racing, guys and girls. Suddenly this lap is worth a whole lot more points, or suddenly this lap is worth a whole lot more points, or the sprint. Yeah, they'll mix in sprints kind of here and there. And also in the Tour de France, guys and girls, doesn't matter. They do King of the Mountains. They do best sprinter, best, whatever. And that's to liven up the race. They've been doing this for a long time. But anyway, since women can't as easily make a living off of the sport like guys can, because they unfairly don't get paid as much, then the women that do succeed at the sport, because the sport requires brains, end up you can tell that they've got brains because they've got PhDs. And it's unusual. I've noticed. I've been doing this show for almost 20 years, and the number of women that I've noticed that win stuff, I've interviewed quite a few of them that are also PhDs, it's impressive. And guys, almost never. You'll get age group guys that are PhDs, but guys are almost never the overall winner of Ironmans. PhD guys are almost never the winner of Ironmans or long gravel races, the super competitive stuff, or like the Tour de France or something. Lance Armstrong doesn't have a PhD except for doping. Okay, we'll edit that out in post. Sorry, Lance. Anyway, so Rosa Clower won, but this is also interesting in the spirit of gravel. Both she and Lachlan, the guys winner, both had issues where Lachlan went off course, and I think that's one reason he showed up his bike computer is actually he went further than the other people, and he still won. He barely went off course, but then he had to turn around, and when he came back, the big group had caught him, and then he had to break off all over again. And then Rosa had a flat and rode on, I think it was a front flat, and rode on a tire insert and crashed as well, and got the flat fixed at an aid station coming up, and then took off and then still won the race. So that's the whole spirit of gravel and, overcoming adversity, which is very Ironman-like too at the same time. And then there's the whole Chrissy Wellington screaming for anybody got a CO2, which, by the way, I saw a clip from, I don't know where the Ironman was, but one of the lead women had a flat on her rear tire on her triathlon bike, and it was a full carbon wheel, and the CO2 cartridge, the adapter would not fit into the rim between the carbon little U-shaped hole, so that she could get it onto the valve to shoot it up with the CO2. She was so frustrated. She was like, when she realized it, she's like, oh my God. And she just stood there looking around like, oh. And, on one hand, test all your equipment before you go. But sometimes, you get something new and you don't know that it's going to be like that. And it's unfortunate. Hold on, I got to check something real quick. Okay, I was just checking. I got a meeting at 2:00. I got an hour. So then the second place female was, where is she from? Denmark, maybe? And she was also, I saw this interview where they start off the interview. It's Ted King, King of the Ride, a podcast. He's interviewing her. And she's not a pro. She's come from the other way. She became a pro cyclist after working for a pro cyclist team as a masseuse, right? And then when she goes into her story, it's not exactly like that, because she said, on one hand, like everybody, including like this German lady, Rosa, I don't know this yet, but I would not be surprised in Northern Europe, a lot of Europe, everybody rides bikes all over the place all the time. They grow up on bikes, because they were asking this her name is so difficult to pronounce. Everybody calls her Gee, G-E-E. And she said, well, one, she's been on a bike since she was like 2 or 3, and then also in college, just riding around with friends back from bars and stuff. That's where because he asked her, where'd you get your bike handling skills? And she's like, I don't know, like riding around drunk, riding back to her apartment or whatever after going out drinking and stuff. You learn urban riding, you get some really good bike handling skills, which is true, because I grew up riding suburban riding on a BMX bike, and that's where I learned tons of my bike handling skills, like how to bunny hop things and go over curbs and jump off tall stuff. It's all BMX bikes riding around the neighborhood and driveways and on streets and curbs and stuff, and around parking lots. So anyway, then, and also jumping off of dirt ramps and then crashing and nearly breaking my face was a good one time on my Huffy. And she did race some, either in college or out of college or before college or something like that, some UCI races. So she actually did do some bike racing. So she knew how to do bike racing, and how it actually works. And then so she decided to career move at some point was, go to school, learn how to become a masseuse, I guess, or something. And then she ends up as a masseuse, though, for a small women's team. And she ended up having to do everything for this team because it was a small team without much budget. And then I was about to say typical women's team, but there's a lot of men's teams that are like that too. And then she got picked up by, I guess, the Trek Segafredo team, the women's Trek team, and was their masseuse. And then they had like 4 of her on the team. And so she had more free time. And so now she's like really in on the industry and knows some of the best people, the best riders, friends with them and stuff. And would also in the morning before the races a lot of times don't start for World Tour teams until like 10 or noon or something like that. So she would go out on bike rides with other people, and other people were like, man, you're really good. And then eventually a word came around that they were looking for somebody to be a gravel racer or a gravel team, and would you like to be on it? And she said, yeah, but it's not a World Tour team, so she doesn't get a World Tour team salary, but to get around that, they're kind of taking advantage of her, in my opinion. Well, she doesn't race World Tour races, so I guess that's why you get they have a minimum salary for World Tour, kind of like the Major League Baseball, has a minimum salary or whatever. NFL has a minimum salary. So, so she's on this. She's just sponsored by Specialized, and then Specialized pays her, but nowhere near, I think, what a World Tour salary racer would be. But anyway, she got second in this race, coming quote unquote out of nowhere. But again, there's kids who have grown up on bikes and have done, been on bikes their whole lives, but have just now become big time pro racers. That's a little different. I think, Rosa Closer, didn't ride bikes at all until 3 years ago. But irregardless, the fascinating thing about the entirety of the race finish was it was the biggest group finish, I think male or female, of ever in the history of Unbound, in that it was a 9-person mass sprint for the finish line. Nine women all at the same time were crossing the finish line, which just shows you how hard they were all working to try to drop each other. Nobody would drop each other, and nobody could break away, and they were just killing themselves. And I think they set a time record. I know the guys set a time record, so they were hauling. And it's a difficult course. They did the North course, and the North course is harder than the South course typically. And it's a little bit rougher, a little bit more terrain. And also in the mix, check this out. Heather Jackson, multiple time Ironman winner. Heather Jackson, and Kona racer, probably did she ever get top 10 at Kona? People probably 3 times, you idiot. I don't remember. But Heather Jackson has retired from doing pro Ironman circuit and now does gravel racing, and she's won some ultra marathons. I think she's just not a strong swimmer as much, and that's always held her back. So she's I'm just going to do this gravel racing and ultra marathoning now that she's aging up in Ironman. So she was in the mix. But when you look at the splits on the finish, it's got Rosa and Guy, and then the other 7 after her are all within a second of each other, 2 seconds or whatever. And so it was a big pack finish, and any one of them actually could have won this thing if they pushed it a little bit harder, played their cards just a little bit differently. And back to the spirit of gravel and the all that, just to see that it is possible, just like Lachlan, to kind of come out of nowhere, or kind of be. Lachlan didn't come out of nowhere. He just goes to nowhere and trains on his own. He's out in orbit somewhere and then shows up and then races. And the implications there are we get demoralized sometimes. We're up against people that are so much better than us, and what do you do? And you just can't compete against people that have so much more talent than you. And it turns out it's not exactly as bad as you think. The winners are definitely talented and they're pretty great. But let's say within your age group at a local race, you could really do really, really well. You could get up on that podium and really kick some ass, man. If you train to a way that suits you and you pay attention to how your body's reacting to it, and you just kind of slowly build on it, and then use that, and don't get sucked into crazy stuff. A lot of people got sucked a few years ago into doing low carb and all that. Just train, pay attention to what works for you, and do what works. So myself too, I got sucked into doing low carb. About killed me on a couple rides. Because carbs carry hydration, and in the Texas summer heat, I figured out pretty quick that this was a really bad idea. So speaking of that, we're going to get back to more women's stuff as more women's stuff comes up, and more results come in, and more stories come in. I just watched a video that is awesome. Let me see who makes it. And boy, they show really good footage. Velo worthy. Inside Unbound 2024, the fastest Unbound ever. About midway through this 40-minute long video, they show the athletes just roaring through the aid stations and how their pit crews, I think there's 2 times in the 200-mile race where they get help from, their own people. And then there's 4 aid stations, I think. And then the other 2 aid stations are, you're not allowed to get specific help. It's just water and food that's random from volunteers. But 2 of the aid stations are like you get your own crew. So if Kai did this race or I did this race, then Emily and Kylie or whoever, if Emily and Kylie did this race, then we could go out there and support them at 2 of these aid stations individually and custom. But that's it, which is also another cool factor of this type of racing is a lot like Ironman. I just thought like the comparison of this to Ironman is so interesting because the beginning of the race, you go out in the scrum, just like a mass water start, trying to find position. And then after about an hour, things kind of calm down a little bit. And that's like an Ironman. And then it's a whole lot of, just pacing and watching and trying to hold back a little bit for the middle of the race. And then at the end, as Coach Adam used to say, commute to the 5K. And the last 3 miles is just insanity of giving it everything that you got. And because you held back a little bit through some of it, then maybe you'll be able to give everything. But you got to be self-sufficient. You got to do gear choices. And there's a million different gear choices. And did you do the right thing? And, you got to have a plan A and then a plan B and then a plan C and a plan D. When everything starts going wrong, what do you do? Anyway, real quick before I go inside, a couple things with me, the boil and the creatine. Let's the ingrown hair boil. We'll save that for a second so I don't lose anybody on the creatine. I've been taking creatine. Creatine, as you get older, it's an idea advised, to supplement with creatine. There's no adverse side effects, supposedly, and it helps you put on and keep muscle. But a side effect is you can add a couple pounds, and some people more so, like 5 pounds for some people, of water weight. And for running and cycling, that could be kind of sketchy. But what I'm taking creatine for is to try to stay hydrated in the Texas heat. I've been thinking about it for like a year or two because one of the side effects is water weight. I'm like, well, then aren't you kind of turning your body into a full body camelback? And then on really hot days, you don't need as much, you don't get as dehydrated as soon because you have water in you already that your body's holding onto and releases slowly as you need it. And we'll see. I did a really long ride on Saturday and I got dehydrated after I was done. I didn't notice until I was towards the end of it, but I lost 4 pounds of water weight before and after, but that's also on top of drinking at least 4 pounds of hydration, I would say. Oh yeah, at least 4 pounds of hydration. So in a way, I lost 8 pounds of water through sweat. And that's the kind of heat that we're dealing with here. And then I was kind of like struggling the rest of the day with a headache really bad. So it's hard, measuring, something when it's just on yourself is a poor scientific experiment because you don't have somebody else to compare it to. I don't have a non-creatine Brett to say how much more dehydrated I would have been. So it's a little bit of guesswork and a little bit just kind of like knowing, whatever. But my numbers were pretty good. We've got power meters now on our gravel bikes, and I chased Kai for about 2 hours, hour and a half. And when he and I stopped to use a public restroom, we were pouring in sweat, and it was only like 10 o'clock, and then maybe 10:30, and then rode home in even more heat, and it was over 100. It hit 100, and it was 100 in the shade or something. No, it was 96 in the shade. And I took a break for a little bit and recorded on the podcast, which I ended up throwing away. I do that a lot. I'm like, nah. And then I wouldn't say limped home, but just kind of rode casually the rest of the way home. And then I was done. So that was a really, really hot, dehydrating day. And maybe you could say all I had was a headache the rest of the day, because I went out and ran the next morning after, but I did have I kind of laid around the rest of the day. I could have gotten more done. But again, on the other hand, I was riding with Kai, so trying to keep up with him, pushes me a little bit too hard. And but also, so with the power meters, they are working. I rode in the hail the other day, and it was so cool having stuff I got power. I got the headphones that are water resistant. My phone is water resistant, and there was lightning crashing all around me. So I'm listening to music while this is all happening. And I'm in the middle of a hailstorm. It hurts, but I got a helmet on, so that's good. And I don't think I've actually ridden in hail before. I've done plenty of backpacking and other stuff in hail, and where we had to hunker down under trees because the hail was so big and dangerous, and then walking through a swamp, high meadow, but basically a swamp of ice chunks from the hail, knee deep in places of ice water, freezing. People got hypothermia that night when we got to the campsite. But anyway, through all this, the power meters are working great. We have the Asioma. Favero is the brand. Asioma is the model. And we have the mountain bike pedals. That way we can use them for mountain biking and for gravel. And I have a power meter. I have an old Power Tap on my Trek Speed Concept. And so I don't need one on that bike. And Kai will be able to move his, and he's moved them back and forth. They calibrate really quickly. You just need to put in your crank length if you move them from bike to bike. And then it's really nice having power, because like I said, I've trained with power for 15 years almost. 14 years. And I know that by using power, I can dole out my effort a whole lot better. And then now we can teach. Kai's rides with power indoors on the trainer, but now I can actually coach him on how to use power outdoors. And you come up with a number that's probably going to be your average for the ride. And then for example, on this ride, there was long, gradual downhill with a tailwind, and it's your power's naturally going to be lower when you're doing that. It's harder to find power when you're riding like that. And then when it turns uphill, your power's naturally going to be a little bit higher, because it's easier to find power when you're going uphill into a headwind. So it's okay for when you're going uphill for your power to be 10 to 15 to 20 watts, a little bit higher than your average, because when you turn around this is why you want to know the course. When you turn around, you got a tailwind, you're going gradually downhill. You can coast a whole lot more and still go pretty fast. And then when that power is lower, they're going to average out. So let's say, it's 240 on the way out where it was harder, and then 200 on the way back. Well, that's going to hit your 220 target for power overall. And that was kind of where I was at, actually. And I averaged 222 watts for 4.5 hours. And that's rugged terrain, high heat. And I was really happy with that. I was for a while I was averaging 235, and I was whoa. But it turned out I was kind of, I was going uphill and into the headwind, and then so it's artificially high a little bit. But 220 to 230 watts, if you're really aero on a triathlon bike, that's a 5-hour Ironman, depending on how much weight you're pushing around. So that's no joke, dude. That's like a nice number. You just have to be able to do that with a low heart rate and be durable, so that it doesn't hurt you too much, so that you can run off of that and then run, a 3.5 hour, 4 hour. If you run a 4 hour, if you swim in an hour, do a 5-hour bike, and then run a 4-hour marathon, that's a 10-hour Ironman, That's pretty crazy when you think about it. That's all it takes. So, because that 4-hour marathon is what? That's all I need to run? It's yeah, if you do these other two things. And so, the other thing was, a few days ago, I developed, we're going to get back to Unbound and some more race news and stuff like that. So just bear with me, this gross part here for a second. I developed a lump. I'm okay. It's not cancer. I developed a lump high up on the inside of my left thigh, but not on my bottom bracket, not on my taint, crotch, whatever, under area, but very high up on the inside of my left thigh, kind of where that artery would be. Of course, then I'm I got an embolism or an aneurysm or whatever on my artery. And it was only painful to the touch. It was not painful on its own, but I was in the shower scrubbing after working out, and then I touched it as I was, making sure everything's clean. And then I was oh, what's that? And then I felt it. And I'm Jesus, man, that's a freaking lump. Starting to be the size of almost like a ping pong ball, maybe 2/3 of a ping pong ball, pretty big. And then I was like, oh, so this is something to do that I wanted to pass on to everybody. Is I told Emily, and Emily's a nurse, and she goes, and she takes off, and I'm like, where are you going? She goes, I'm gonna go get a permanent marker. And I'm like, what? Permanent marker? She goes, yeah. Basically, what you do is you mark the perimeter of it, and then you watch it over the next few days, and take a photo, and then you see if it changes over the next few days. And that's one of the very first things you do with something that's weird on your body, right? So if you got a skin like a mole that's weird or whatever, you take photos, take pictures of it. That's the first step. And I was like, oh yeah. So then the next day, and we said, hopefully it's an ingrown hair and it's created a boil deep under the skin. The next day, I was looking at it, and it's kind of developed a little bit of a head on it, a tiny, tiny one. And I'm like, oh, it probably is a boil or, whatever. And then with a sanitized needle, so I do a flame and then some soapy water on it, make sure it's nice and clean. And I'm like, okay, so it was some kind of boil, some kind of something. But I'm like, I never, hardly ever get ingrown hairs. And how did this happen? And then I figured it out. On the last show about gravel locos, y'all probably heard me talking about, I started cramping in my left leg. And so I started riding with my left leg extended a lot. And even where I was unclipped and it was extended a lot to try to keep my leg straight so it wouldn't cramp up. So what that did is it created a lot of rubbing from my saddle into the inside of my top left thigh. And then that rubbed a hair backwards in, so it became ingrown. But now it's a few days later. They're feeling it right now. Like I said, it's not my crotch, so y'all aren't getting any kind of special show. So it's a little sore, and it's a little bit kind of a lump, but it feels like it's pretty much gone away. And that's how you learn in scouts and such. If you don't pop a blister because it could get infected once you've opened it up, right? Your skin provides a barrier from it getting infected. So if you're going to commit to popping something, blister, a boil, whatever, a zit or whatever, be ready to clean it as soon as you pop it, and then keep it clean so it doesn't get infected. And until then, you should not pop stuff. Okay, so we've covered creatine. Oh, the creatine experiment is going to continue. Oh, another thing is creatine turns out has a side effect of being a mood booster for a lot of people, as good as, or sometimes better than, an antidepressant drug. And the reason is, not only does it create energy so that you put on muscle and just have more energy for like sprints and stuff better, it creates ATP. The chemical that your body uses to create energy is also part of that. Is you run out of that, and then what it needs is creatine to make more or something. And what it does is now you have that in reserve, and so that, because you've been supplementing with it, so your body can recycle, I think, the materials to make ATP over again more easily. Well, apparently the same thing happens in your brain, that creatine, they found, helps you when your brain gets tired and then it needs to recover. The creatine chemical helps that recovery happen a little bit faster. And so it's really good for people that are depressed or tired or overworked. And what's fascinating is I did not know that before I started taking it. And I knew about the muscle thing and the water weight thing. That's pretty much all I ever heard about it. And so I was like, okay, I started taking this creatine. And then within a day, I noticed that I had more energy. I was getting more stuff done around the house, and I was in a better mood, and I wasn't grumpy. Like if something went wrong at work or something went wrong with my bike or whatever, I had more energy and I had more pep, and I was more happy all at the same time, like noticeably. And so it's not if I had known that ahead of time, then it's kind of like you got to watch out for the placebo effect. Am I doing this? Am I feeling this way because I knew it might make me feel this way, and I'm making this up in my mind, but I did not know this. And a couple days later, I was watching a video on the effects of creatine, how creatine works. And I started noticing there's other videos about creatine, about how it helps with brain health and a mood booster. And that when they did studies with people that had to go on antidepressants, it was as effective as an antidepressant in a lot of people. Not everybody, don't if you're on antidepressants, don't not take your antidepressant. But a lot of people, they found it was pretty great. And I've noticed that for sure. And I think with ultra endurance training, you get tired and a little grumpy and you need naps and stuff like that. And this might help take the edge off of that. But then again, we got to be careful, like with the whole Dave Scott thing, is what if it enables you to do more and then your body can't take it, and then eventually all it does is you put your foot on the accelerator and pours more gas on the fire so that you blow up worse down the road. So just be careful with it. This is not a medical advice antidepressant podcast, and I only play one on whatever. We're going to leave that off. Okay, so that's it. We're getting close to the end of the show. I think that as some more news rolls in from the race and some personal stories, like Emily Newsom had some bad luck again. Emily. And that took her out of contention for the race. And, stories like that. We'll have some more updates as the drama unfolds and we hear some more stories. And then we'll wrap up the show and get it published out there for y'all to check out. All right. I'll be right back. All right. We are finishing 6 mile run. Super humid and hot. It's morning. It's 7 o'clock. I just finished. Gosh, like a 10:30, 10:45, maybe 11 minute mile pace. And walking the steeper stuff to try to stay cool when it's with a tailwind, or trying to get my calves warmed up. I'm overcoming a little bit of compartment syndrome in my calves for years. When you gain weight, your calves get stressed out, and then it's harder to run without them like being in pain. Anyway, about to walk into the house, grab a recovery drink. Brought a lollipop with me and finishing the run with it. Also, right when I got up, I ate a couple gummy worms. And I think that got some blood sugar to my legs because I actually ran a little bit faster, better than usual. More positive attitude. And then, creatine in my coffee. A little bowl of granola cereal. And, very tiny. Give me some calories and a little sugar in my coffee. Oh, that's a lot of carbs. That's a lot of sugar. Well, dude, I just ran 6 miles and I burned 100 calories per mile. I did not eat 600 calories and I burned probably 650, 700. But anyway, we're going to wrap up the show. A couple cool things just rolled in on the news. Hold on and I'll bring them to you. We're walking in. Okay, walking outside, lollipop in my mouth. Put the lollipop up high. There you go. May never see that again. And then listening to the Marginal Gains podcast with Dylan Johnson. There was quite a few cool little details in there. Well, they talk about Dylan Johnson. Whoever it's with, Silka actually puts out most of it. And they had Dylan Johnson in the wind tunnel. It's the big deal. And they said, the theory always is the wider something going through the wind, the slower it's going to be. But that also depends on the texture, right? A golf ball, a little bit wider of a golf ball with dimples is still going to be faster than a slightly smaller golf ball with no dimples, because the dimples help it move through the air by reducing frictions on the side as it goes through. And then, so anyway, it's dramatic, the difference, by the way. Hold on, I'm unstrapping on my shit. I posted a video to YouTube last night of riding with the gravel or with the Instacam under the aero bars. It is really cool. It looks like I'm flying an X-Wing fighter. And I give some tips that you can barely hear on when to ride in the aero bars and when to ride on the hoods on gravel. But it's about half an hour long. It's high def. It's really cool. It's a 360 camera. So I pan around on rare occasion. I shake my fist at a car, like comically, that roars past me being a jerk. And it's good times. Hold on, I'll be right back. I'm going under. After bike tires and suspension forks, we're going to talk about, let me pull the mic a little bit closer. We're going to talk about car tires briefly. I learned something really interesting that'll help all of us, no matter what you do out there for sports. If you drive a car, recovery drink activate. Okay, shape of a cooled beverage, carbonated. Okay, so pool float. Click the face, it's over there. It's Continental, maybe it's the Gravel Race Kings or something, but 2.2 inch mountain bike tire, which is maybe like a 52 or something millimeter. I don't know. Somebody convert that for me. But anyway, it's wider than the 47 or 48 gravel tire that you usually would ride, but it aerodynamically tested faster, which is so bizarre. And it's what I think we'll find out if Dylan decided to ride it or not in the race, if he got it to fit in the frame without fear, because you worry about mud jamming stuff in his bike. Well, typically people don't ride mountain bike tires, and also that tire has a really low rolling resistance. And so it tested several watts, like 3 watts or something like that, faster than the narrower gravel tire. So it's faster aerodynamically, and it's faster, or as fast, like rolling resistance wise, or maybe less so because it's thinner. And so it rolls better. And that is so cool. And they're not sure why yet. There's a flaw when people say the whole thing, it depends. Well, it doesn't, it depends on what, It's not like this mystery. Well, it's a mystery right now. It depends on things that haven't been tested yet. For example, when they say a Camelback or a U-Sweep pack depends on the rider. Well, they're narrowing down with the U-Sweep pack, for example, or whatever pack. It depends. If you have a lower position, like your head down is a little bit lower, then less of the straps are into the wind, and then the hump on the back actually becomes more of a benefit. If you sit more upright, like Ben Delaney does versus Dylan Johnson, he sits more at a 45-degree angle. He was slower with the Camelback on because he's more of these straps, which causes, we'll call it air friction on the front of them, cause drag. So you got to be careful with the "it depends" as just a throwaway answer. It actually means we haven't figured it out yet. Because there's definitely a reason. There's always a reason. With science, you can always figure out eventually. It just hasn't been tested enough yet. And then part of the reason that the Lauf fork with suspension in the rear of it is faster than the stock felt fork, the felt breed carbon gravel bike, is because the felt stock fork is crappy in the wind to start off with. It's not built to be aerodynamic. It's more almost like round tube-ish. And that sucks for aero. So the real question is a Lauf suspension fork faster than a Lauf rigid fork? Because they make both. Because the two winners of the race, first and second place, men, no suspension, women's no suspension that I can think of. And then somebody posed a question. It's such a great podcast. Posed a question, if you have suspension, does that eliminate some of the rolling resistance? Because rolling resistance is reduced by the tire conforming around the bumps instead of fighting against the bumps. So if your suspension allows your bike to not fight against the bumps, then do you need a tire that is as rolling smoothly, and maybe go with more knobs, to have better traction? And they said, yes, that is true. And it's kind of like a sliding scale. It depends. You'd have to test it out to see, and which one actually is the most or the best for certain courses and stuff. But it is true. A little bit of front suspension will act the same as a lower rolling resistance tire. So that's kind of cool. And then I think last thing is on car tires are flat, right? And bike tires are round when they contact the road. And that's why bikes don't hydroplane, but cars do. Car tires are like skis. And if your tires are overinflated per, what they should be, manufacturer specs, then they do bulge a little bit in the middle, right? Like a balloon. And then you get more center tire tread wear. If they're underinflated, then more of the sidewall is taking the load, and then the edges of the tires, of your car tires, will wear out faster. And that's exactly what happened on my truck on the when I wore out my tires at 50,000 miles, 55, they were exactly like that. The rear tires were worn smooth in the middle, probably because I had them inflated kind of high because we're towing an RV. And I had the front tires a little underinflated also because the RV is pushing down on the back, and then and it's lifting the front tires. But then I like to run my tires a little soft if I can. And I probably over the years, because I've had the car 3-4 years now, had the front tires softer for ride quality, so it would be more supple. But then it ends up wearing out and the outer edges of my tires were on the front were worn out faster, like worn smooth. It's pretty cool. All right, on my way to work, and some more details have dropped in. It's raining outside. I had to skip my swim this morning because they closed the pool. Not if it's raining, but if it's lightning. And it was a front coming through, so a good chance of lightning. But I see no lightning. I might have been able to go swim, which would have been nice. But a little bit of a break is okay on occasion. Okay, fire engine 1. And it's about Lauren de Credenzo. How do you say her last name? Anyway, and her flat tire leaky valve situation. There's a fix for that, and I thought I'd share with y'all. And then also why there was a bunch sprint at the end of the race is a detail that a lot of people don't know. They just say, oh, the race has changed so much, and there's a little bit of that, but there's also a reason why. Okay, so Lauren de Credenzo is awesome. I think she's a former pro world tour rider, and she was on a solo breakaway, then at some point had a flat, and then was trying to put air in it, and she had a sticky valve. And this is where when you have sealant in your tires, and then the sealant gums up the valve a little bit, and then when you try to put air in, the valve gets gummed up enough where air won't go in. And then also the valve won't seal correctly, and you get a slow leak anyway. And there's a fix for that. And per dollar, if Lauren had done this, oh, we got a loose black lab. Hope he knows where he's going. Hey, buddy, are you lost? You need help? Come here. Oh, okay, he's running away. Oh, he looks like Kona. Okay, he's doing the runaway thing. You can't catch a dog that doesn't want to get caught. Okay, so anyway, I've had this problem, and it ruined one of my rides, and Lauren's ride, she might have won if she didn't have this valve problem, because also it's stuck when she tried to put air in it. Air wouldn't go in, and then so she had to keep riding on it. And then when she got to the aid station, they only got a little bit of air in, and it's the valve. Okay, so there's a company that makes a valve. There's some knockoffs coming now, but the one that's guaranteed to work is Fillmore, which is a cool name because it's Fill Fillmore valves. And what they did is they widened the barrel and redesigned the little plunger inside just a little bit. So the valves, the valves are too big for sealant to gum them up, right? Sealant works on a hole that's small, so they made the hole bigger. And then all of a sudden, sealant's not a problem anymore. And why are valves are so small, are so narrow? Because rims were so narrow for a long time. Well, rims aren't narrow anymore, and so you don't need narrow rims or narrow valves. Okay, so what happened to me was mountain biking a few years back. I switched over to these valves because I had a slow leak and a slow leak and a slow leak, and I could not get them to fix. One cure is to, you take out the valve core, clean them, put them back in, and then, I don't know, all kinds of crazy crap. You order valve cores, replacement valve cores, and so Fillmore valves are $50 a set. It's $25 each. And you think that that's too expensive, but how much did Lauren de Credenzo spend to do this race? And how much would you spend to go on a hotel and everything else and then not have a problem at a race or a long ride? And then also, I personally experienced how much time you waste fiddling with valves that kind of leak. You're not really sure, is it going to hold? It sucks. And so eventually what happens is you replace your valves with these, and it's no more problems ever, to the point where you forget about it. And then so I'm at mountain bike practice, and people around me are fiddling with their valves, adding air to their valves, and and I'm like, oh yeah, I used to do that too. And on occasion, I'll mention to somebody, hey, get Fillmore valves, and You'll never have these problems ever again. Oh, there's some lightning. Okay. And then people just like, they don't do it. It needs to be advertised more that these things exist. And there also is no valve core. So you can put sealant in straight through the valve. You don't have to remove a valve core to get sealant in. If you have like an injector with a tube, it'll go straight in. Like, it's crazy how it just changes everything. And I had them on my mountain bike for a couple years and was like, wow, this is really cool. And I had some valves that were starting to stick and get gummy on my gravel bike. Didn't think much of it. I'm gonna spend $50 on that. I'll just deal with it. I'm being that person. And then I'm on a ride with Kai, and we're having a good time. And my rear tire goes flat enough where I need, probably because of a cloggy valve, air was leaking out of the valve. And towards the end of the ride, but we're in the woods and it's awesome. I feel my rim banging against the ground because pressure's too low. And I stop and I try to air up my tire. And this is what Lorenzo was talking about. Lauren, God dang it. And then, sorry, I haven't had my second cup of coffee yet. So I tried putting air in with a hand pump because I carry a small mini pump. Nothing. Air just won't go through, right? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to hit it with a CO2 because that's got some power. Nothing goes through. And it's so frustrating. And, you just don't know what to do. And so I ended up riding home on, I think it was like 5 PSI or something. And it's just the dumbest freaking thing. And I was like, that's it. And the heat and sweat and mosquitoes, everything working on this thing. And I'm like, I know that there's a fix for this. It's on my mountain bike. So I ordered the Fillmore valves and put them on my gravel bike as well. So both of my off-road bikes have Fillmore valves on them. And I will never go back. In fact, after hearing Lauren's story, I may go ahead and buy a pair and give them to Kai for his gravel bike. Because if he's racing, sticky valve could ruin his race like it did Lauren's. Okay, I commented on her video. It's her coach's video. Hey, get these Fillmore valves, and maybe it would have changed your race. And it's up to people that are smart to actually take that advice and do it. And until then, it's a competitive advantage. And keep it to yourself if you want. I've enjoyed them far enough, and it's made such an impact with me. I want to share it with everybody. And then, there's some valves out there that are like half that price. I'm not sure if they work or not, so I'm just sticking with the Fillmores because I know that they work. And boy, it's coming down hard now. The next thing was, the group bunch sprint finishes. It's so competitive and all that. Actually, that kid. Well, actually, there's more to it than that. Turns out the last part of the race, let's say the last third of the race or so, was into a headwind. Let's say the last 20% of the race was into a headwind and relatively non-technical and not that hilly. So what that means is it's really hard in that situation. If you're ever riding in a group and you try to break away by yourself and it's into a headwind and it's relatively flat, it is very difficult to break away because you're fighting into a wind by yourself, and everybody else that you're trying to break away from can rotate and take turns at the front and take breaks. So going into a headwind amplifies the need to have several more people with you to get away. And so that's why you ended up with a 9-person bunch sprint in the women's race. And then also that's why once Lachlan and Chad had broken away and they were working together, it was really difficult for anybody to bridge that gap, and they just all wanted to stay in a the big group behind him just could not fight that headwind enough to break through somebody. Nobody could break away from that group to catch up. And if you want to do some ninja level race tactics, is break away from the group when know the wind and the race course for the day and the direction, and then do your breakaway while there's a tailwind for a little bit, and then you can get away. And then when it turns into a headwind, you're already out in front. And it makes me wonder if Lachlan actually did that, if he timed his breakaway to get away while there was still some tailwind, and then was able to stay away because now everybody's spread out in that headwind. Anyway, that's it. I wanted to add that in real quick. Very interesting stuff. Oh, by the way, I shot a video with Kai down the pipeline in a local gravel area, a neighborhood with a huge pipeline right away. That's this dirt road, and it's gradual downhill. So we were bombing down this thing. It was so much fun. We do some single track, actually catch air off of a road, the edge of a road into a ditch briefly. It was probably like 2 inches, but to me it felt like 3 feet. And then we saw some deer, and that's on the video. It's a 360 degree video, so I'm able to pan and turn the video sideways so we could see side profile of Kai and of the deer and of somebody's dog that started chasing us, and briefly. And then the first person footage, it's mounted like under my handlebars, so it's like playing Emily watched it and said it was like watching a video game. It was so cool. And the video's not very long. I chopped it down so that it's digestible, and it is, I think it's like 12 minutes long, 10 minutes long. So go check it out and comment on it, and let's get that video some likes and some traction, and we'll keep putting out more. It is a ton of fun making these things. It's on my YouTube channel, Zen and the Art of Endurance, or Brett Blankner, one of the two. And let Kai know how pro he looks. It's motivational. He does. He looked freaking pro. It's pretty cool. And man, I thought I was going to be right behind him and film one of these videos where you're like one of these race footage videos. But he's so fast that I could barely keep up with him, and he disappears as a dot several times before I can catch him again. And a couple times, if you listen, you can hear me yell at him, "Hey, come back!" Dude, I'm trying to film you. But anyway, okay, that's it. Be right back. All right, that's it. I got to clean up and get to W to the ERK. I got a lot of work to do this morning. Got papers to write and projects to get on. And I think that's it. Everybody stay safe out there. Oh, yeah, go check out the YouTube channel. If you need coaching, don't forget to reach out at texaphonia@gmail.com. Check out the YouTube channel. And also, if you want to be on the show or sponsor a show, same thing, texaphonia@gmail.com. We're doing video now, so that's a really great thing for sponsors and for exposure. And everybody stay safe out there, work the uphills, cruise the downhills, and keep the rubber side down out.